I used to mess around with all types of different brisket recipes, marinate it, injecting it, using fancy rubs, but no matter what I did, something just felt different. But then I tried Texas style brisket and everything changed. The bark, the smoke, the simplicity, it just hits differently. Now I won't cook brisket any other way. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I do it step by step so that you can make a brisket that people swear that you went all the way to Austin to pick up at a barbecue joint. Let's get started. So what is Texas style brisket? Essentially, it's just a big piece of meat that you throw on a smoker and let it go for hours on end. And it's very simple. Unlike other styles that swear by marinades or sauces, this just uses salt and pepper and smoke. Why is it different? Or why is it legendary? It's the simplicity, really. Again, salt, pepper, smoke. Those three ingredients are all that you use on a Texas style brisket. And when it's done right, you get a killer crunchy bark, a deep smoky flavor, and slices that practically melt in your hand. And the goal here is just like any other brisket, a perfect bark and juicy tender meat on the inside. And when it comes to cooking a Texas style brisket, low and slow is the way to go. None of that hot and fast. We're talking about hours on the smoker. So let's move on to choosing your brisket. And what you're going to want to do is choose a whole packer brisket. This is going to be the type of brisket that has both the point and the flat together. And it's going to be roughly between 10 to 15 pounds. Now, the flat is the leaner part of the brisket. It's the thinner part of the brisket as well. Now, the point is the thicker part, and it tends to have more fat in it. And it's also going to be the part of the brisket that takes longer to smoke. When you're at the grocery store and you're looking for a brisket, go ahead and look for one that has a nice fat cap. This fat is going to render during the cook, and it's going to keep the meat nice and moist. Now, when it comes to trimming your brisket, you're going to want to get rid of any of the loose hanging fat or any of the fat that looks like it's wet as well. You're also going to see some fat that looks like it's kind of bumpy. So we want to remove that so that everything is nice and smooth. You're also going to see some hard fat. Now, the hard fat, that's not going to render during your cook. So you're going to want to get rid of that as well. And what you're going to want to do is keep those fat trimmings, because what you can do is turn them into beef tallow at a later point. While you're trimming your brisket, you're also going to see some silver skin. This is going to be the thin membrane that is on the brisket, and it almost looks like it's like the brisket is wrapped in saran wrap. You're going to want to remove the silver skin, because if you don't, it's going to lead to a chewy and tough bite. When it comes to seasoning, all we're going to use is salt and pepper. It's going to be a 50-50 mix. 50% salt, 50% pepper. And when you're choosing your salt, go for a coarse kosher salt. The larger granules are going to stay on top of the meat instead of penetrate into the meat. If you use regular table salt, the salt is going to penetrate into the meat and you're going to get a super salty brisket. The same thing is true when you're using your pepper. You don't want to use a finely ground black pepper. You're going to use a coarse black pepper. Now, seeing how we're only using 2 ingredients, this is going to let the meat really shine through. This is a giant piece of meat. So be generous with your seasoning. Get the top, the bottom, and all the edges. And when you think that you have enough, add just a little bit more. Now, if you want to experiment with your seasoning, go ahead and add some garlic or onion powder, or maybe some smoky paprika. And if you want some spice to this, add some cayenne pepper. But keep it light. The goal here is to let the meat do the talking for us, not the seasoning. And if you're new to backyard barbecue and need a little help with smoking times and temperatures, I got a free guide for you. It covers everything from meats to veggies, and it's perfect for getting started. Just drop a 100 in the comments below and I'll send it your way. Let's move on to preparing our smoker. What we're going to do is set our smoker to 225 degrees Fahrenheit. And today I'm using a charcoal smoker, but you can use any type of smoker you want. A pellet grill, an electric smoker, or a propane smoker work just as well. The main key is that we want 225 degrees Fahrenheit. On this charcoal smoker, in order to do that, I got to open up my top stack here and then my bottom vents to get proper airflow. And what I'm looking for is going to be that clear smoke that's happening right now. I don't want any of that white grayish smoke. For wood selection, you're going to be looking for either post oak or hickory. I don't have any post oak. It's not really common where I live in Florida, so I'm going to be using hickory today. And the key here is you don't want to be using too much wood. Yeah, we do want a lot of smoke on this brisket, but we don't want the smoke to be overpowering. We want a nice light smoke. Then it's going to be time to get your brisket onto the smoker. And what we want to do is lay the brisket onto the smoker, fat side up. This is going to allow the fat to render down into the meat. Now, if you're using a pellet smoker or some sort of smoke where the heat source is going to be directly on the bottom, you're going to want to put fat side down at first. This is going to act like a protective barrier and keep the brisket from burning up. Regardless of the type of smoker that you use, eventually you're going to run into the stall. But don't panic. Use your patience. You could either let the brisket continue to cook, or you can use what is called the Texas crunch. And that's when you wrap it in foil and then you put it back onto the smoker until it reaches an internal temperature of 203 degrees Fahrenheit. When you're cooking a brisket that's between 10 and 15 pounds, it's going to be about a 12 to 16 hour cook. So you're going to have a lot of patience in order for this thing to come out right. Now, some of the pros of wrapping your brisket is that you're going to push through the stall without any issue. I haven't had a brisket yet that has stayed at the stall for very long when I wrap. And when you wrap, you're going to want to add some sort of liquid. Normally, I use some beef tallow. You could also use a little bit of water, apple juice, maybe some apple cider vinegar, or you can even use something like a soda, like a Coke or a Dr. Pepper. It really depends on your preference. When it comes to Texas style brisket, the simplicity is what you want. Now, how do you tell when your brisket is done? First is going to be the internal temperature, which is going to be about 203 to 205 degrees Fahrenheit. Another option you can use is the probe test. You just stick a probe in there. If it moves in and out with very little resistance, like a hot knife through butter, then you know that you're in a good spot. You could also use the bend test. This is a little less reliable of a test to check for doneness. You pick up the brisket, and if it kind of jiggles around like jelly, you're usually pretty good. Once the brisket is done, then you're going to move on to the resting stage. And this resting stage is going to take anywhere from 1 to 4 hours. And what you're going to want to do is take your brisket off of the smoker, wrap it in some towels, and then place it in a cooler or in the oven for that resting period. This is going to allow the juices to redistribute. And then once your brisket has rested and you got to about an internal temperature of probably about 170, from 160 to 170, then it's going to be time to slice. And this is a muscle that goes in two different directions. In the flat, it goes in one direction, and in the point, it goes in another direction. So what you're going to do is separate the point from the flat and then cut against the grain. And you're going to want to do this in about 1/4 of an inch slice. And then what you're going to be looking for is that the brisket bends under its own weight, but doesn't break. You want to also check that it pulls apart nice and easy. And then you're going to go in for that bite. And then when it's time to eat, serve it with some coleslaw, maybe some mac and cheese, maybe some nice crispy pickles. Just something that has a little bit of a different texture and a little bit of a bite to cut through all the savory meat. So now you know how to cook a Texas style brisket right in your backyard. A brisket that has a perfect smoke grain, a smoky flavor, and it's just downright delicious. But here's the thing, it's not the only way to cook brisket. Check out this video right here where I cooked the most insane, juiciest brisket I've ever cooked. Check out this video next. I'll see you there.